Okay,
Yes,
so let me
I'm
just
so hungry.
So meet Andrew and Sarah. Just so you know, Desralynn, Andrew and his partner Declan have something called Back Pocket Podcast, and
Great.
They have been using the platform to lift up voices of brown and black and marginalized people, and they are our partners.
Great.
And so, and you know, anybody that we have are down people.
That's right.
Can you guys see me?
Hi, Andrea. I can hear you and I can see you.
Okay. Hello, Desralynn. How are you?
So
I am here and I'm okay today. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little frustrated. I came to my partner's house tonight and I left my computer at home, so I'm Zooming on my cell phone, which I hate doing, but
okay.
I hate that. I so feel you, Andrea.
but I don't have time to go back and get it right now, so.
Yes. Well, are we recording?
No, we're recording, but it's prepared. We're recording through Zoom, but not on live yet. Just let me know when to click the button. I'll click the live button.
Go live. Go ahead.
All right.
So you guys, we just want to let you know we are going live to Facebook Live. But this is actually, hi, for those of you who don't know, I'm Marnita of Marnita's Table, and I am so honored today to have two, to be honest, two women in this community that I've been really needing to hug and hold. Two women that I love very dearly, who have known me, I think, for a long time now, and know that if I'm convening a conversation, it's a conversation that's specifically a safe space for Black people and marginalized people to come and actually have our voices be heard and not to be filtered through a white lens. So both only have a few minutes because they are major leaders in our community. I can't believe. But I felt a little bit, I have to say, I felt a little bit like all that when I texted you both at like 5 and I got you. Like I was like, because I did feel like it was a girl power thing at that moment, like Black girl magic. Like, yeah, bitch, I'm there for you. So I just want you to know.
Just so you know, Marnita, I probably, if it had been anybody else, I probably would not have even responded.
Exactly. Marnita, you've just set such an amazing lane for yourself, and the work that you've done in community is just utterly amazing. And when you send out a call to have a conversation, it is a humbling and honoring experience to be a part of that. So especially with someone as revered as Miss Andrea Jenkins, one of my personal faves at the city. So,
well, you know, Andrea and I, we actually met before we did the Philanthropy.
Yeah, we had
in my 2006 saying, if we are still just coming together like this, just having conversation, like the importance of belonging and building community. And as you know, Andrea came to us 2 years ago and said, I have a vision for building bridges and breaking bread. And Andrea, the reason I brought particularly you two and invited you here today was because, one, I believe that the conversation that needs to be had all over the country right now, I'm hearing it all over, is, and we are calling it SAFE, S-A-F-E, it's not an acronym, it's literally the word safe. What does it mean to be safe in our Black bodies? What does it mean to be safe walking down the street? And different people mean different things by defunding the police and what this looks like. And there's all this data out there about, 70% of police calls are actually welfare calls. They're maybe a public health worker should be there. And so being that this really started it didn't start. White supremacy did not start with the killing of George Floyd.
Yeah.
450 years of white supremacy, and then one day a few white people were like, oh, maybe Black lives do matter. So there is a part of me, I might cry tonight, I might be a little bitter, but I'm seeing all this money being thrown around, right? And everybody's like, but what I'm hoping, and why we wanted to have this with you right now tonight, is we believe the only authentic thing that can happen is if we have people, authentic people with authentic voices, from and in community determine what it means to be safe in our bodies, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and that we collaboratively come up with it. And then we want to spread it all over, Andrea, so that it starts, we're the epicenter, and we're going to concentric circles of change. So, so we always open with a question. We kind of open like the way we normally close with Circle Sharon. So Andrea and Desralynn, and by the way, Lauren is here, and Lauren lives 8 blocks from about 8 to 10 blocks from where George Floyd was killed. So this is her neighborhood. This was also where she was born and grew up. We have Nandi Tippett, who's been coming to the table since she was 9. Say wave and say hi, Nandi. And then we have Andrew, who we tease and call like white chocolate and other things, because he's actually our Gen Zer on the team, and is very committed. He's a committed white ally, and I think we need some of those, because this can't happen. Even if we center it in our voices, we cannot do this alone. We need to work in collaboration. So what is one thing that makes you feel very safe in your own community? Is there one thing that makes you feel safe? Andrea, is there one thing that makes you feel safe in your community?
Oh boy. I don't know if there's one thing that makes me feel safe. But if I could only say one thing, my neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrea, say who you are. What ward? You're the vice. Say who you are, so we understand that. Even though we're asking you this personally, what's your transactional title and role in the city?
Well, transactionally, I am Andrea Jenkins, Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council. In reality, I am Andrea Jenkins, the poet, the artist, the storyteller, historian, the griot, the keeper of the knowledge and the history, and being engaged in politics is just one stop on my quest for righteousness and fairness and justice. Yesterday, and I just got to mention this, Marnita, because I think it's really a big deal, and I think it's something that can give us all hope, regardless of your identity, your sexual orientation. But yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ and transgender Americans can no longer be arbitrarily fired from their jobs for being gay. That is something that I have been working on, advocating for, lifting up in every conversation for the past 30 years. No matter what the topic is, I've always said that we must have employment, protections for LGBT people. And yesterday the Supreme Court ruled that is a reality. So I'm saying that to say that it's June, it's LGBT History Month. This work was brought about by protests. The Stonewall Inn that people talk about, that was a riot. It was not a picnic. It was not a parade. I know we have parades now. It was not a parade. It was Black and brown, trans, and gender nonconforming people going to jail, fighting back from police brutality, saying we're not going to take it anymore. And that's what, the protesters are saying right now today.
Absolutely.
All across Minneapolis and St. Paul and all across the world. People are fed up. And so I use that as an example to say that advocacy is a long struggle, but it works. And we must keep fighting. We can't give up. We will get to the promised land. I'm telling you, in 1863, there was a whole lot of people that thought slavery will never end. On Friday, June 19th in 1865, even though it was a year after the emancipation, Black people were free. Slavery ended. And so, you know, we got to keep on fighting. We got to keep on struggling. And even in that, you know, we knew that Jim Crow came along and
Yep.
the black codes and,
The
you
13th
know,
Amendment,
the
right?
13th
Yeah.
Amendment, all the things that continued, redlining,
Yep.
police
Yep.
brutality, all the things that continue to try to hold us back, but we keep moving forward. So don't give up. Don't give in. This is our moment. This is a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we gotta take every and each opportunity to make this a reality. One of the things that I'm working on the city council is and Desralynn and her team
Mm-hmm.
in the race equity department have been really instrumental in helping to bring this to fruition. But we're developing a resolution declaring racism
Yep.
as a public health
Yep.
crisis. And so we're going to start to take this issue head on. We're naming it, we're calling it what it is, and we're going to create policies that address it.
Absolutely.
Even within the context of all the legal hurdles that people keep trying to throw up, we're going to address this issue head on. We can't keep putting up barriers or excuses or, you know, um, dragging our feet,
Yep.
talking about the economy. It's time for reparations.
Yes, and I actually think that if I think there's been a concerted effort. My ex-husband used to say, you know, if we were really stupid, they wouldn't have had to outlaw reading.
Wow.
Which is kind of a common sense way to think about it, you know? And Desralynn, I want to throw it over to you because I know you have to run. You're running between, say who you are, and is there anything that makes you feel safe? Because you were the one who I saw on Facebook say, before you abolish the police, like, I need to know I'm safe in my body. And
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
reached out and said, would you be willing to come to the table?
Yes.
Absolutely. So yeah, my name is Desralynn Cole. My transactional title is Race Equity Manager at the City of Minneapolis. I have the pleasure of reporting to Andrea Jenkins and the rest of the council when we are sharing our work in the Race Equity division at the city. My community title is Northside Baby. I'm a proud Northside baby. And I'm also the Urban League Young Professionals, the Twin Cities Urban League Young Professionals president for our chapter. And so that's how I'm blending all of my lenses together. I'm so excited and grateful that you asked me this and asked me to be here on this conversation and asked me this question. I've been thinking really hard about what makes me feel safe. Everyone knows I'm a single woman living alone, and I've been thinking about this. And one thing that has happened in my neighborhood, I live in Heritage Park. I will say the children of my neighborhood being able to still gather, still play, still breathe their breath, still be able to run barefoot across the green lawn that we have has allowed me to feel safe. And additionally, because it can't be one thing, but additionally, it's understanding what language is. I'm a firm believer that words mean things. And so understanding what safety actually is and understanding what it means when we're saying things like abolishing police or dismantling police and defunding, all of those things have different meanings, and taking time to really saturate myself in the meaning of these words. And thinking critically about the next steps and or unintended consequences of these different things being thrown about has allowed me to feel more safe, and seeing my trusted leaders really step in and being able to be a catalyst for this change allows me to feel safer. So I'm getting safer. I don't feel safe. It's not it's not an end, it's not a period, but it's a semicolon. That is how I've been appreciating this conversation, because it's not done. It is going to continue to be lots of conversations with lots of layers. And I'm excited to begin to share and receive. I couldn't do one thing, but
No, that is
yeah,
major.
that's it.
And one thing I want to say, because I know you, like, different people have to drop off and on. I want to say to you, it's interesting that you're talking about racism as a public health issue, because what we're mashing up, for those of you who have ever experienced our work, is some of our most popular conversations. And for 5 years, we've run a conversation called Healing from Trauma.
Yes.
And this conversation is actually safer. And it's funny because originally we've been calling it safe, but I keep putting safer with the R in parentheses because one of our project directors is Ojibwe. And, you know, she really talks about she's never felt safe in her body. Some spaces, like at the table, she feels safer, right? But so we can't promise perfect safety anywhere, but we can promise that we will listen and that we'll actually hold space and not just have, say, you know, the transactional leaders in the community make the decisions. That I've actually invited you here as much because you're interesting, committed, dedicated women in the community as you are leaders in this community. And I know that one of the things that you enjoy at the table is actually listening to other voices. And so we're mashing up healing from trauma because we don't think this work can be done. The conversation that we've been having internally at the table is about state-sponsored violence against Black and brown bodies. I don't feel safe. I was profiled at the dog park. If you don't know that, in October, I posted about it. The police police SUVs rolled up on me, one front, one back. They got out with weapons. I was with my 2 dogs. The white people had called and said that my dogs were violent. I was dangerous, dark complected, dangerous and out of control and violent. And my dogs had blood on their muzzles, that we were at the dog park illegally, and that they were violent. And that they thought that they were trying to attack dogs. So when the police rolled up on me, one front and one back, at, you know, a few blocks from my house here, they got out with hands on weapons because they'd been told I was a crazy, dangerous person with, you know, 2 weapons on leashes. My 2 dogs, Andrea knows my dogs. My 2 dogs basically went to sleep on one officer's feet. I stepped forward and said, "Hi, I'm Marnita." The lead officer said, "Wait, Marnita's table?" I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking if that had been my 26-year-old son, Black son, he wouldn't have been Marnita's table. He would have been a young gay looking would maybe. That might have been a different story. So white people tried to weaponize the police against me. And then the next day, animal control showed up and they tried to have my puppy. And this is just me, right? Like I keep trying to say we need to stop accepting. Like I have white people who for years have said, well, you're different than other Black people. And I'm looking at the Black faces, they're all pretty extraordinary. You know, they're criminals of every culture and race and ethnicity. But that's why we say healing from trauma has to go hand in hand with the conversation that we built up 5 years ago as well. And by the way, couldn't get the $50,000 worth of funding to have the conversation between all the different community members across the decision point to reduce the number of people of color in the criminal justice system. We are now changing that conversation to reimagine public safety and the criminal justice system. So that still is about us having, you know, like we don't have a dollar that can still jack us up. Like so many of those things were really about monitoring our bodies. And so we're mashing that up with building bridges and breaking bread, which Andrea and all of us put all those people on a bridge, and we're going to keep doing that because we think belonging and community is important, Andrea.
Yeah.
And you're going to be, when we're on that bridge in London in 2 years, you're going to be there on the mic with us with the mayor of London.
I will be there. I will be there. You know, I wanted to mention just one other thing, Marnita, because you reminded me, and then I'm going to have to take off. But, you know, Desralynn and I worked together last year at the same intersection on 38th in Chicago when a young white barista
That's right.
profiled me
Yes.
as a potential, I don't know, white supremacist, he said, or maybe I could be an anarchist. I don't know. He profiled me and really created this scene that got all the community upset. And it was sort of like a Starbucks moment, or Becky at the dog park moment,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
the same thing that you just described, Marnita. And we called it Coffeegate, and we tried to take it as an opportunity to learn from, right? And so we hosted a community meeting, and we had over 100 people show up, and the media was there, and it was like freezing cold outside, and then a white woman came to that and charged me with violating her human rights again. I mean, white fragility is so just rampant and present, and steeped in racism. I mean,
So you'll
steeped in
appreciate
deep
this, Andrea.
racism.
I recommended that all my white family and friends read White Anger. And immediately,
You're frozen.
they said I needed to read White Fragility. And I actually was feeling pretty spicy. And I said, White Fragility, I call that Tuesday. Like it's like white fragility is something we deal with every day, right? Like,
yeah,
I call that Tuesday.
Yeah, no, that's real.
that's real.
I'm getting it all day, every day. Believe me, from all over the country. And it's white fragility mixed with white privilege. It's like,
wow. Yep. Yep.
I demand. I'm a white woman, and I live in Tucson, and I demand
here and
that
Right, and she's super teeny tiny. And
Uh-oh, I think we lost Marnita. Is she frozen, or am I frozen?
Are you okay?
Now we should be able to hear you now. Say something now.
Still there?
We're here. It's just breaking up a little.
Did we freeze? Everybody freeze?
Okay.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Yeah.
So, Laura, Desralynn and Andrea, because we know you both have to jump off. So, are you guys in? We want to do this, but we don't want to do this without you guys.
Right.
We don't.
Absolutely.
So we're building these conversations. We're going to get them funded. We're actually making it easy. We're telling everybody, like, you put in $8,000, and like we're making it very community owned. So it's not the police, not the city. It's direct. When we're just holding the space. So we wanted to let you know this is just the very first little edge of it, but there'll be more coming, and we want you in, and we want you to feel safe.
Yes.
We all deserve to feel safe in our neighborhood.
Thank you so much, Marnita.
Marnita, yes. Let's keep this work moving, and I think we're gonna have to have a lot of organizations that step up and do this work. Marnita's table is not gonna be able to speak with every single person, but every single person needs to be heard from. So
absolutely,
how do we make that happen? And this is gonna be a big part of it. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to see you, Desralynn. I haven't seen you for a while.
I know. I'm good. It's good to see you.
I miss my work team. I miss you guys.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
It's hard. So, Andrea, I know you have to jump off. Do you want to, so you can jump off, and do you want to just say one last thing, Desralynn?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for creating this space. Bye, Andrea.
Yeah, we love you.
I just want to say thank you for creating this space, and just as you continue to march forward, I just encourage more conversations, more definition building, and making sure that language really translates to all of the communities that will be experiencing this. Like I said earlier, words means things. It does. And so we want to be sure that we are creating language that people can understand, digest, and be able to share in their own communities. So I am also invested in this and support you and the work that you're doing, as well as what Andrea said. It's going to take lots and lots of community organizations and lots of hands and lots of hearts to really bring these conversations to fruition, and it is not impossible. Conversation needs to be had, and I am looking forward to many of them in the next coming months and years ahead as we work towards this goal. Thank you so much. I do have another meeting I got to jump into, but anytime, Marnita, let me know, and I'm here to support you and speak to any of the work that you're doing, for sure.
Thank you, love.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Mr. Bates. Thank you, Desralynn. Mr. Bates.
Hey.
Have you met this Mr. Bates before, Lauren? This is Ted and Nicole's brother.
Yeah. Hi there. Hey, everybody.
So,
And this is my friend Jess.
Hi, Jess. But introduce yourself and answer the first question and explain how, like, you got to the table today, because we go way back. But in fact, you texted me today about Ward 12 and wanting us to come and have a conversation in your district, the same conversation. That's why I invited him on to have a little conversation with us about what would make him and Jess feel safe in their neighborhood, and what they're hoping to achieve, and then throw it on to somebody else after that. Lauren, Andrew, and Nandi haven't had a chance to talk because we wanted to get Desralynn and Andrea both had other things, and I just hijacked them and made them come on. So.
All right. Well, yeah, then, I think what's interesting about this.
Introduce yourself, though, so we actually get a voice tag on you.
Okay. Well, I'm Ananda Bates.
Yes.
I've known Marnita for quite some years and very appreciative of you inviting me to join this. So since the neighborhoods have come together, obviously, for reasons of more so of a protectionist aspect, because we were worried about people coming and lighting fires in our garages and our trash cans and, breaking in. But as a result, people are getting together, and it reminds me a little bit, it's the start of what I experienced growing up in St. Paul, in a very affluent neighborhood as well, but we knew everyone. And I knew every house, every tree, every rooftop, every person, every pet, because we played everywhere and we knew everyone, and we gathered as a community. And I felt so safe because I knew that if I fell off my bike, I didn't have to go home. I could just walk right in that door, and so my hope is that as we get to know one another purposefully, that means but also with the intention of holding the mirror up in front of ourselves, each other, and being able to challenge each other and challenge ourselves around what Blackness and what whiteness and what community and what Minnesotanism and what Americanism and privilege, because I have privilege, right? And I wear it, I use it, I get it. But I also know that if that's me getting profiled by somebody who's calling and saying, this dude, that privilege, like, basically means my ego gets a big hit, because that means I better shut up, right? So safety is in being recognized, like Marnita, you being recognized. But when you're not, and somebody profiles you and weaponizes the police, there is nobody that can come through that one feeling, yeah, that was okay. So.
And you're in Ward 12. What neighborhood, whereabouts are you centered in Minneapolis?
Yeah, I'm at Standish.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm like 39th, one block off 38th, and I'm short of a mile from Chicago, where this all kind of went down. And I actually heard the protests walking on that Tuesday past a block away, and I was like, what is going on? So I really didn't know that this all had happened. So I just walked out, and all of a sudden there I was walking to the 3rd precinct.
Wow. And hey,
Yeah.
Jess, do you want to share with us what would make you, one thing that makes you feel safe in your own community, if there's something?
You know, I'm here a little unexpectedly, and I appreciate you asking, but I feel today I'm really here to listen and
Okay, good.
just try to gain more understanding.
Lovely. Thanks. We always like to, what you need to know about us is we're very inclusive. Although we are centered on voices. Okay, Teo and Taz are having a conversation. Whoosh. Stop. We center our conversations on marginalized and communities of color, but everybody is welcome at the table and everybody is part of the solution, just so you know. So want to throw it to Nandi. Nandi, is there anything that you think, hey, come. Is there anything that one thing that makes you feel safe in your community?
I'd say genuine support and connectedness. I believe when I get support and like affirming words from my neighbors and friends, or just even my indirect community, I feel more supported and safe. Yeah.
Throw it on.
I guess I'll pass it to Andrew.
Thanks, Nandi. I was just chatting with Marnita really just briefly, and I was saying how incredible this is and how grateful I am that Marnita has welcomed me into this so I can listen and learn from Andrea and Desralynn. I mean, that contribution was awesome. And to dovetail off of what they said about Andrea sharing her neighbors make her feel safe, and Desralynn sharing how seeing children running around outside and interacting with the community makes her feel safe. What makes me feel safe is something that we've been missing a little bit with COVID, is going out to eat and sitting around the dinner table with strangers and just being in an environment where, specifically around dinner, where you can have a conversation and everyone's sitting there present with the person across from you. You're in a room full of strangers and everyone is there for a reason, whether it's, to experience happiness with a person across from them, or just to kind of see what everyone's doing in the community. So I've recognized that during COVID, knowing that, we've been kind of cooped up a little bit in our homes, but now things are starting to move on a little bit. And I feel definitely more at home and welcomed into my community when I have that time to interact with them, especially around the dinner table. And that's why I love Marnita and the table for her importance of food and family and using that with the table. And I'd like to pass it to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren. And what makes me feel safe is very similar to what Andrea said. It's my neighbors, and it's knowing them and having really good relationships with them. It's my neighbor to the left over here who is a Black woman and has raised her family for generations in this community. It's my neighbor to the right who's an incredible white ally, him and his wife. And I saw on Facebook, Dante, one of our good friends, posted that his allies are starting to make him feel really safe in this new community that he's found him in. And I just want to echo that, it's both for me, the folks who look like me and the folks who have been here and created relationships with my parents and my grandparents, but also the new folks that are coming in who are super committed to making sure that we know they want to be a real neighbor, a real part of our lives and our families and our communities. So I'll toss it back to Marnita.
So one of the things that's really interesting to me about this, I don't have my camera on because even with two giant broadband signals in my house, neither of them work very well, it turns out. Both, neither Xfinity nor really two different networks, and neither of them work very well, to be honest. But I do love my blue snowflake. Oh, you can't see my picture. We have this kind of running gag but I do love my blue snowflake microphone. Oh, this is a blue snowball. I have a snowflake too. I have both of them. I have my little one that I travel with. What I thought was interesting is that basically every single person said the same answer. Did anybody notice that? We said it differently, but each person said belonging, neighbors, community, feeling like you knew people. And, you know, there are some challenges. We're in big cities, right? So how do you not make somebody new feel like they don't belong, right? So I think there's some things about this that are very interesting that knowing like, you know, Andrea says, knowing everybody on the block. You know, the kids, all the moms were your mom, right? You couldn't get away with anything because all the moms would be like, I see you, you know. That kind of engagement where you didn't call the police, you called their mom. Like nothing was more horrifying when you were a kid out in the neighborhood than when a mom was like, I see you. I remember once when our kids were young, our son Sam was a bit of a daredevil, and we got a call from somebody saying, yeah, do you know that your youngest son Sam is out drafting on his skateboard behind cars in the neighborhood, right? Like, so he and his buddies, a car would go by, they'd run out from behind a tree and grab it and ride, you know, behind it. And of course it was horribly dangerous, but somebody knew whose kid he was and called us. You know, it probably had been going on for about 35 minutes, but we already had a call and could go out on the street and be like, that's bad behavior. You know, we had kids in the neighborhood at one point where their 16-year-old sister, the 12-year-old boys thought it'd be fun to ride on the roof of the car while their 16-year-old sister sped through the alley. Just death waiting to happen. As like, you know, but that took about 5 minutes before we called their parents, right? Like, you didn't need the police involved. You just picked up the phone and their mom came down and, you know, took them home by the ears, if you will. Like, this is not okay. You know, so, you know what? I'm an urbanite. I like a big city. I like being in a diverse, interesting place where I don't know everybody and I haven't heard every language and you know, everything isn't expected. And how do we trade, you know, what's security versus, and really right now the conversation is about police. There's it's so clear that, you know, whether it's my story about being profiled at the dog park, or George Floyd, that it's very clear that white people, and again, hashtag not all white people, please do not send us letters saying Marnita is hating on white people. I'm not. But if you do not recognize, there's a lot of people who have been weaponizing the police against Black and brown bodies. There's no way that I would ever call the police if I were at the dog park and disagreeing with somebody. I know a young man who's white who went through some addiction challenges. He broke his back when he was 18. He was an elite athlete. He shared with me, he's somebody I've known most of his life. I seem to know everybody. If you've not noticed that, I know everybody everywhere. And I started welcoming many of you when you were very young to the table, and was a safe space for young people, many of them. He came this Sunday and said he was really suffering from anxiety, and he told me that Officer Chauvin, the police officer, his parents at one point when he was, they were very worried about him. They called the police and they had to do a welfare check. And that officer with 3 other officers showed up at his house. He's a young white man. Chauvin put him and he had a broken back and was in chronic permanent pain. And he pushed his way into his home, didn't have a warrant. The police threw all of his things out of his, suddenly they were on a drug hunt, even though it was a welfare check, because the parents were worried that he was depressed and that they hadn't heard from him. So the parents had called the police to help them, to make sure their son was alive and well and okay. And so my brother, who's an ER doc in Seattle, was saying this week that, you know, when somebody's drunk, why are we calling the police? You know, like, why isn't a public health person take him home and Like, it'd never be worth it to put somebody in prison for that. Like, so that we handle some of these, and we need to recognize a lot of these have to do with white supremacy and social control. So I'm going to go to some more questions, because you know the lifeblood of Marnita's Table. By the way, we are going Facebook Live right now. I don't know if you were there when we said that. And this is a recorded podcast episode. It comes out every Thursday. This will be next Thursday morning. Andrea was our special guest, but then I got Desralynn, Anna, and I didn't have time to put you all in. So you're all special guests. I love you all. So I'm going to throw this to Nandi. Nandi, choose a question and answer it yourself, and then choose anybody else you want to answer it.
These are all such large questions.
Well, you're here to deal with the large issues, Nandi.
Yes. I'm going to attempt 4 because I feel like, do you have a role in making your, wait, no. Wait. No, it's 2 that I want to do. Is there anything that makes your community feel safe now? Is there anything that is currently working? So my answer to 4 is a little layered because I currently live in a suburban area. In Vergrove Heights, the border of Sunfish Lake. But I did grow up in South Minneapolis, right next to the Somali Mall. And I'm feeling torn because I feel like my community and the people who connect with me on a personal level are in South Minneapolis. And my community in proximity are people of privilege, I'll say that. And so my family has, recently-ish joined this kind of privilege of being apart from the urban area and that life that comes with it. And so, I don't know, I feel as though our distance and the privilege of being in this suburban space is what provides that illusion of safety, I'll say. So I'm kind of flipping the question. And I think it bothers me when I take a walk around my neighborhood to see my white neighbors look and feel so safe and entitled to that. Knowing that so many of my friends who've chosen to live in urban areas or who live in urban areas by default don't have that privilege. And so I think it's my part to kind of not necessarily enlighten my neighbors, but I'd like to reach out and have conversations. I did see a Trump flag the other day, so I'm wondering how liberal my neighbors are. But yeah, I'm just in this weird place of like realizing that a lot of times when Black people work to assimilate and gain the access to things and privilege, it kind of flips into a situation that's not as desirable as we thought it would be. I think my family kind of moved out here to be closer to certain educational experiences and, I guess have more of a backyard and things like that. But ultimately we're distanced from that literal like personhood community that I felt when we lived in South Minneapolis, and would be so accessible to the people that I felt would reach out and come to us and be of support in any situation. So I kind of would like to change that culture in my area a little bit. I think part of the privilege of being suburban is not feeling any motivation to connect with your neighbors. In fact, it's almost like encouraged to not reach out in that way because we're all out here to not be bothered. If I get that sense from my like suburban area, And, you know, now that my family is taking walks together and things like that, I feel this very like contrived and performative, like distance, extra hard wave and smile. And I don't know, I just really want that to move into a more genuine space. So yeah, I think that question was kind of intending to draw something more positive, but I think I am really perturbed lately by this, like, yeah, this is not real feeling illusions of safety that I have out here in the suburbs. I'm gonna pass it to Ananda, Mr. Bates.
Yeah, thank you, Nandi. I was thinking of one thing, and then all of a sudden it kind of morphed into something else. And so I've always been a protector, and in a peaceful way. So I'm teaching my son how to be a peaceful warrior. So when I think of, do you have a role in making your community safe? Like, I never got into fights, but I always stepped in to break them up, to calm things, to de-escalate. And an example is some super huge guy falls over in a bar, kind of bumps up against me. And then rather than like looking at him disgusted or angry or like, hey, you just like totally wiped out on me or whatever, like I knelt down and said, hey, buddy, you all right? And he tried to get up. I was like, nope, just hang, just get your breath, you know, let me grab you some water. And I started asking, like, how do you feel? What's up? You know, is it just too much alcohol? Did you slip? Whatever. And immediately the bouncer came over and like almost tried picking him up and throwing him out. And so I had to like put myself in between him and the bouncer and say, hey, let me do this. Okay. I'm already communicating with him. We're good. I'll help him out and into a car. And he just didn't want to let it go. And it escalated. And I was like, every effort you put into trying to force him out, he's going to stay put. I'm able to get him out because I'm communicating with him. And, you know, it got to the point where he's like, I'll call the police. And I was like, there you go. He's going to stand there just like a statue. And that's exactly what he wanted to do. So it's been the understanding of, you know, there's been a part of me that was drawn to the police force because I saw that, who the heck are we putting in there? Like, I want to see more people that get it, that get the communication and then the de-escalation and caring, you know. But I also get that I wouldn't want to be shot at either. So, but so that would be, you know, my role was during the when this thing was escalating, and all of a sudden there was just these fires, and people were talking about folks coming in from out of state and white supremacists, and just everyone went on high alert. And everybody was saying, you know, stay in your home. Don't even like go out on your porch. I was like, no, I'm going to go stand on my corner. I'm going to wear a very bright, you know, jacket. I'm going to have my bike. I'm going to have flashlights. I'm going to have my phone. I'm going to stand there and let anybody that drives by or walks by know, you know, this neighborhood is safe. Because I'm protecting it. So it was really interesting. And then just down the block, there was people also doing the same thing, but there was one guy that was doing it very angrily. Like as I biked around, just once in a while I would bike around different areas. Like he came running out and kind of yelling at me, what are you doing? Right? And I was like, yeah, so that's not who I want to be protecting my neighborhood. I want more people that are willing to be just like, hey, are you good? Can we help you find anything? Or, you know, not immediately go into attack mode. So Andrew, I'd be interested to hear.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. A peaceful warrior. That really resonates. That's awesome. Thank you. Kind of a hybrid between 3 and 4. What isn't working or what wasn't working for me personally is the common phrase, silence is violence, that has been pushed in the last 2 weeks. That's something that was been vocalized to my platform. I co-host a podcast called The Back Pocket, and Nandi's challenged us several times in saying we need more people of color. She's tuned into our live streams and challenged us many times, and we hadn't really stepped up to the plate to the extent that we were probably capable of. And when George Floyd was murdered, several people reached out to us and said, we'd love for you to step into the community. You claim to be a voice of the Twin Cities. I would love for you guys to step into the situation and have a conversation about racism with a person of color and talk through the situation, because your audience really needs to hear this. And I'm a 24-year-old, 2 years out of school. So I speak to a lot of 23 to 28-year-olds, primarily white guys. And so do I have a role in my community to make it feel safe? Absolutely. And this moment 2 weeks ago, when I had on a good friend, Io, who's a few years older than me, I played football with him at St. Thomas, and he brought his friend on, Aaron, and they shared what's going on in their head. We had a 3-hour conversation, and there was one point where Aaron shared, he's like, I know it might feel like I'm rambling, but these are my thoughts going on in my head. This is genuinely what's happening. So thank you, Andrew, and my co-host Desralynn, for allowing me to just share and get everything off my shoulders. And after that podcast that we recorded, we released it a few days later, and it was the #1 podcast we've ever had. We've been doing this for 4 years. We've released 270 of them. And I mean, that just speaks volumes to what I didn't think I was capable of and what actually the community wants to hear. So I'm excited to continue it. I'm super, I've already said it once, I'll say it again. I'm super appreciative Marnita and Lauren continue to use me as a resource, and I'm always ready to be a helpful hand. And I'd like to pass it to Lauren.
Thanks, Andrew. Wow. I'm feeling number 4. Do you have a role in making your community safe? If yes, do you know what your role is? I think I'm learning what my role is. I think as I age, it changes. When I was younger, I felt like my role, and pretty similar to what it is now, but my role was to get to know everyone and make connections between people. I was the neighborhood Girl Scout, so people knew my name because they were expecting me with those cookies at their door. And I was also like the neighborhood babysitter. So I knew that I had a role.
You were the pusher of Thin Mints. You pushed Thin Mints.
I did push Thin Mints.
You were Nagabi, pushing those Thin Mints on us once a year. I'm just joking.
Yes, that was me. And in some ways, I feel like because I did those things and I developed those relationships, and let's be honest, like, I don't know the best way to say this, but I know that I am a palatable Black girl, to people who may not feel comfortable making friends with other people of color because of fear. And so I think it's my place to make those connections, especially with people who otherwise would be afraid of each other or not feel accepted by folks. And then as I age, I'm realizing that not only is there a personal responsibility, but there's also a professional responsibility. And I'm still learning about what that looks like, both. But I think being committed and dedicating myself to that commitment, whether it's getting engaged, at the caucuses and being a delegate and getting to know my neighbors that way and making sure that I'm bringing other young women to those events who would be probably afraid to go by themselves. I'm just learning. I'm dipping and dabbling, figuring out what what makes sense for me. It wouldn't make sense for me to be on the corner as a protector. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the thought of me being a protector with my body. I'm very short and I look like a little bunny rabbit. Like I could not hurt anyone. So yeah, I'm still figuring.
How we feel about fluffy bunnies at the table.
Yes.
Thump, thump. Fluffy bunnies can do damage, Lauren.
Very true. But we don't want them to know that, Marnita. We don't want them to know.
Don't tell them about the fluffy bunnies.
But yeah, that's me. And I'll pass it to you, Marnita. You haven't answered your question.
Well, it's very funny because when our kids were little, we'd go camping. And we had, I can't remember what we called it, but we had this thing about a bunny that was like a serial killing bunny. Like it looked like a bunny, but it was a serial killer. Like it came hopping in and then it just killed everybody with its little cute bunny ears. So we have a thing about bunnies in this family and they're not safe. And I think maybe that's a little bit what Nandi was saying about her community. Is, I grew up in an all-white little town 60 miles north of Seattle, and it had the largest population of Ku Klux Klan. And I was never safe there. There was never a time. And in fact, I'm married to somebody who's white, and there was a period of time when we were really broke. And our kids were little, and we wanted to go on vacation, so we'd go camping. And I never felt safe out in the country and out in the woods. Like, I was always like, who's going to come in my tent? Like I wasn't afraid of bears or wolves or like animals, but I was not comfortable as a Black woman out in the country as like with just me and my child. Like there were moments where, whether it was people decided one day, a really good example, we were working, it was in another life for me, or when I had my company Words on Fire, and my husband, Carl, who was my partner in the business and was also a journalist at NPR and other things, had written an article in the Pioneer Press, the St. Paul Pioneer Press, on why Black philanthropy mattered, not just to Black people, but to white people. Why we wanted to encourage Black philanthropy and that should be supported by mainstream foundations. And we were going somewhere, and Elijah was playing across the street at a friend's house, and Elijah and Sam were probably 8 or 9 at the time, so they were boys. They were not teenagers, the 6-foot-tall loping young men they became. They were boys. And I got a letter in the mail, and I grabbed the mail, and I'm sitting in the car, Carl's driving, and I opened the mail, and there's a letter, and it's from somebody who had read Carl's op-ed in the Pioneer Press. And the guy can't decide if he hates Carl more because he's a Jew or because he's white and he's married to a Black woman. And the thing is that this man knows my address. He's sent me a letter, and he's saying that he's going to come for my family, and he's going to come for my children, the mongrels. And we're driving to a meeting that we are late to, and I have just left to my house with my 2 8-year-old sons running back and forth. The neighbor lady was watching them, but they were allowed to run over and grab video games or to do. And I was supposed to go sit in a meeting and talk about marketing strategy when I had just received a death threat from somebody who wanted to harm me simply because who I was married to and that we were a mixed family. And so I've had those experiences. Spaces that should seem safe are unsafe. Walking Lake of the Isles, my neighborhood where people know me, and a car drives by with kids in it that I don't know, and somebody screams out the N-word. And Carl had his back turned once when they did that, and Carl was like, did they just call me he was very tanned at the time, and we both had our shaved heads, and you couldn't tell if he was a light-skinned Black man or it was, I can tell Nandi can feel that and see that, like why people would look at Carl and I and think we were 2 Black people together. But it doesn't make you feel safe, right? Like, so somebody seeing my neighborhood would think, oh, that's so safe. I was telling somebody recently, when I moved to Oakland when I was 17 years old, and I'd never lived in the city. I'd lived in Eugene, Oregon, in a nice neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, but I moved to East Oakland. And as my ex-husband used to say, 92nd East anything is the hood. Like where, like that is, and I was 17 and I worked in San Francisco, and I would take the bus home. And every night, one of the young Black men would meet me at the bus and say, "Little sister, I just don't want you walking home alone." And I finally left the neighborhood because the white slumlords were so horrible that I kept waking up and finding rats the size of small cats, like smoking cigarettes and going, "Fuck you, bitch," like looking at me when I was trying to sleep. But it was not the people in the neighborhood that made me feel unsafe. Sitting on the front porches, talking to the mamas and the grandmas and the young men, not all of them were employed, but they'd be on the corner, and none of them ever harassed me or made me feel unsafe. There wasn't, like, they always were very worried about me, and like they knew I was under the age of 20 and living by myself. And so they were like, "We'll be your big brother, little girl." And they were just really super cool. Not to say that there aren't dangerous people, or some of them, like, but to me, East Oakland was safer than the little 2,000 person town I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And when my son was 18, I took him to my hometown, Arlington. And I'd always told him, and he actually says this, he says, "My mom would tell stories about the racist in her town." And I always thought those were stories like, "Walked 5 miles uphill barefoot to school each way." Like, an impossibility to walk uphill both ways to school. Can't do it. One of those ways is going to be downhill, right? So if you have a story from your parents telling you that you walked uphill both ways to school, not a true story. Defies the laws of physics. But we were walking. He had just gotten into Brown University. We had shopped at the flagship store of Nordstrom's in downtown Seattle. He'd gotten very preppy clothes because he was going to an Ivy League, right? So he'd gotten Sperry top spiders and like lilac and pink and like, very preppy clothes, little shorts. I was dressed cute in my little cowboy boots, and we were walking on the block I grew up on. And it's very conservative. And this car pulled up. Nobody else was around. There was one guy watering his flowers. It was about 4 p.m. 4 white youth were in the car. They started throwing beer bottles and screaming the F word for gay people and the N word for Black people. "Get out of our neighborhood, go back to where you came from." And of course, where I came from, quite frankly, was about 20 feet away from where I was standing, was the house I grew up in as a child. And my son froze. He was 18 years old, and he literally just froze. And I don't think he talked for another 2 days. Like, I don't think he said a word. Like, he was still, and he didn't mention it to me for another 4 years, until one night at a dinner party, he just like came out and told the story. Like, "Yeah, it turns out my mom wasn't lying. She actually grew up in the most racist, scary place in the world." So what makes one person safe or feel safe in their body is different than what another person feels safe. I have to say, I've had the good luck of not getting a lot of tickets, but once I used to work west of the cities, and I used to have to drive out to Maple Plain every morning, and I had a Maxima, and it, just so you know, Maximas go from 0 to 60 in less. They're very responsive cars. And her name was Giselle, and she was very fast and very beautiful. And we listened to loud music, and we drove fast. And I got pulled over by CHP, Highway Patrol or whatever it was. And he pulled me over, and he was super cool. He gave me a warning. And the next day I blew past him again. And he gave me a ticket. But he didn't harass me. He was doing it like I was going 85 or something like, but he didn't give me like a bad ticket. He didn't pull me out of the car, and that's an experience that I think most whites have, but I shouldn't have to wonder if I'm going to have that experience that others would assume to have, that they'd be given the benefit of the doubt and a warning. I deserve the second ticket. He literally told me, like, "Don't do this again." And I did it again. And like, to be safe, what it means to be safe. I remember in the early 90s, we talked about the crack epidemic all the time. And we called those people criminals. And now we talk about opioids and we call it a public health problem. How often have we made a problem that the Black community has pathological and deviant, and when the white community experiences it, it's a problem that we invest in and we say we should fix in some way, and whether that's okay. And so for me, the most important question on this sheet is it important for all of us to address state-sponsored violence against Black and brown people? And I think that's the most important question. And we barely touched the surface of this conversation, and we've already at time. So I'm going to jump to Circle Sharon, if you don't know it. By the way, thank you all. If you're on Facebook Live, just listening, this will come out next Thursday morning. We love the Back Pocket, our partners in podcasting. We love you, Andrew. Declan's out golfing right now. I made him feel really bad though, Andrew. I want you to know I was actually like, you're missing some good people tonight. You can text him when you're done and be like, ha ha, you know what? You missed it. Anyway, we're going to be having more of these conversations, and we're going to be inviting more of you in, and we're going to be building tools for people to have these conversations, and we're going to be building platforms for you to be lifting up your voices about what it means to be safe in your own communities. And the fact is, our police system came from slave patrols. We are now in the 21st century. Maybe it's time we reconceive what safety looks like. Safety is about our air and our water too. Safety is about being able, the Supreme Court case on Monday, not being fired from a job for who you are in your body. That's safety, right? So I think the conception of what it means to be safe is going to be growing. And we're just starting this conversation. I'm reading an article right now that says that there's a major study that was just done. And it says, what does it say? They've been doing polls. The United States, Americans are the unhappiest they've ever been in 50 years. And 50% say they feel isolated and disconnected. And a lot of that has to do with COVID. So not only do we have this issue of state-sponsored violence against Black and brown people, but we actually have this virus that's killing our people. I have to tell you, I'm overweight. I'm a Black woman. I'm not as healthy as I could be, and I'm at risk for this illness. I'm exactly the profile, long history of respiratory illnesses. So I think there's a lot of challenges confronting us right now, and it's our job to figure out what our role is in solving it, and not just to sit back and let somebody else solve it. And I think that's what Izzy does the best. Intentional social interaction, or digital intentional social interaction, is it centers it, not just to sit back and say, well, I'm going to let somebody else handle it, and if I close my eyes long enough, it will go away. That we are stronger by belonging. We are stronger in community. So I'm going to throw this out. What is one thing you can do to make your community safer? And the one thing I can do is the thing I'm doing. I can actually hold space. I have big wings, and I can lay this table all over the country, so that all of you can come to the table and tell us what will help you be safe, so that we can build policy on this kind of safety. And I'm going to throw it to Anna.
All right. I think one thing that I can do to make my community safer is give people perspective on the importance of evaluating yourself and how you come to the types of decisions that you make when you look at somebody, and the tendency towards profiling, but also the tendency towards how you think people perceive you and how you feel about that. So opening dialogue. I've done a lot of introspection on my approach to men, to women, to my children, what I choose to say, when I choose to say it, and do I do it with intention, or do I just slip into stuff? And so it's giving tools. Like this conversation and what we're all experiencing from a community aspect is like, we're all looking at each other like, we need tools. Like, we seem to have forgotten how to deal with some stuff that just, and so we rely on our police, or we just jump into profiling, we go into assumption, because we haven't been taught in school how to see a person for to see a person before you look at them, right? Like the eyes. If somebody doesn't have the kindest eyes inset in their face, in your perspective, you may project that they're angry, that they're capable of doing harm to you, just based on the shape of their eyes, right? And that's something that we've somehow grown to, we've just eaten it. Like it's just been fed to us, and it's really been fed to just society in general. I mean, I've grown victim to profiling. I know I profile. Like I can admit that, and I want to walk across the street and be like, and ask somebody, "Do you profile?" And if they say no, I'm like, "Bullshit, bullshit," because I do, and I grew up right across the street from you. I watched the same shows. I went to the same schools. I drank the same Kool-Aid. You know, like the question is, how quickly can you recognize that in yourself and let it go, and ask yourself, why did that show up? So understanding what tools we carry with ourselves that we just have to remember to do. That's what I want to, so that's how I want to start conversation with my neighborhood, who's a majority of white people. Like, it's an uncomfortable conversation for me to admit that I have bias, that I have racism in both directions, right? I make assumptions, I make judgment calls, I make opinions on people. But the thing is, I do it less and less and less because I'm paying attention to it.
Well, you know, my favorite quote in the world, and I say it constantly, is your dad's quote: pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Throw it to your next person.
All right.
Are you sure you're close, Jesse? Are you sure?
Yeah, I was actually going to say,
Yay!
I think in my community, my role and what I can do, I mean, I live in an apartment building. Neighbors is a really big part of it, and I've connected with a couple of my neighbors. And for me, it's really personal. I've lived so much of my life just shrunk down and kind of hiding myself, and coming to a place in my life where I'm finding my voice and beginning to learn how to use it. So I'm grateful for the opportunity here to say something, and learning how to do that in a way that makes my community feel safer for myself and for others. So
Do you want to pass it on?
Somebody else?
sure. Lauren? Oh, Lauren?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, it just took me a second to unmute. I think I want to be a lighthouse for people, like let them know that they can always come to my house. I feel like that saved me so many times, whether it was when I forgot my key coming back home from elementary school, like every day, and my neighbor let me in and sit on our living room couch, whether it was when a group of boys in a car were circling me and the block because I was waiting for the bus stop at 5 in the morning going to a practice. I ran to a neighbor who was coming out with her newspaper, and she kept me safe until my bus came. Or, you know, the time when a group of guys in a car followed me for 5 miles. I went to another neighbor's house. They came out with a knife and protected me until they went away. Like, I want people to know that my house is a lighthouse. No matter what's going on, call me, and I'm like, we're there. We're here for you. You can always come in. You're safe. No questions asked. And yeah, that everything is going to be okay as soon as you step in. I'm going to pass it to Andrea.
Thank you, Lauren. One thing I can do to make my community safer, one thing that Desralynn mentioned was the use of language, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that, but that is something I want to internally reflect on. And how can I thoughtfully continue this process of understanding, continue to listen, continue to articulate my thoughts in a thoughtful way and in a persistent way to create safe space. I thought Desralynn did a phenomenal job articulating it. I'm just going to go back and listen to what she said. And Nandi, would you like to finish us off?
I actually want to start my circle sharing with a little quote that is relevant to what I have to say. So my mom shared this with me today. Blackness is routinely associated with cultural deficiency, poverty, and pathology. And I want to help my community unlearn that. Even Black people themselves. I think it's just very diminutive and wrong. And it subscribes to this like monolith that I don't like. And I want to challenge that by getting people to diversify. Something that we discussed in the youth community cast last night is looking at the people that you associate yourself closely with and wondering, why aren't my group of friends more diverse? Yes, like attracts like, but, you know, thinking about things like, why are all the Black kids sitting together in the lunchroom? You know, is it out of necessity, or is it because they simply just want to be together? And that's my motivation behind like popping on the podcast lives. It was like, just want to point it out to you. It's real white in here. And I think that was something that stuck with me that Marnita pointed out to me at a young age. And I think now, like, I worry about my friend group not being as diversified, and my neighborhood is dominated mostly by just heavily melanated South Asians, and there's still a disconnect. You know, we don't have an allyship, not even as neighbors, and it feels odd that, you know, people who are just as melanated as me feel uncomfortable in the presence of my Black family. It doesn't make sense. So I want us to like unlearn that monolith by diversifying ourselves and in every way. Not just thinking, oh, if I put some more people of color into my group, then it's diversified. But like, do you know any queer folk? I remember like Carl was the first person to give me matzo ball soup. You know what I'm saying? I don't have any Jewish friends now. Why is that? You know, I don't particularly love matzo ball soup, but I think there are plenty of things that I could learn and benefit from having known more Jewish people. And so I just want to challenge people to think like, what does your friend group look like? Why don't you have any, you know, people who are different from you? You know, you might have things in common with people you think that are so apart from you. And I think in relating with each other and having known people of different groups and diversifying our community and who we associate with, we can open our hearts to just being available and ready to learn. I think I'm the last one.
You're muted.
Marnita, I think you're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Marnita.
But I said so many powerful things, and now they're lost for all eternity.
I read lips, but I'm telling you, putting that much chocolate in cookies is not going to make it better.
Guys, I turned off my sound because my dogs are losing their minds, and how about this? Thank you all for joining us.
They have things to say.
How about Mondi, you close the show? Tell them I'm going to go on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, my husband is out talking to the owners of the Irish Wolfhound, and I don't know why he thought that was a good idea during a podcast, but that is my husband, Carl. How about you take us home so that the dogs don't lose their minds?
All right. Well, thank everyone for joining us, even our friends on Facebook Live. Thank you, Andrew. We hope to collaborate with Back Pocket Podcast and help you guys diversify. Thank you, Mr. Bates. Thank you, Lauren. As always, Marnita's Table welcomes everybody back. Big hugs. And until next time.
Thanks, Nandi.
Bye.
Nice to meet you all.
One last thing. MarnitasTable.org, #weathertogether. Check us out. Where do they check us out, Andrew, online? Like, where do we find our podcast next week?
Yes, you can find it on Spotify at Thursday at 10 a.m. We're on Apple Podcasts now and every other podcast hosting platform.
Tune into Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah,
You just have to have it on reel. Like, you got to have that button ready to push.
Well, we're supposed to. We're getting there.
I know. I feel you.
isn't this our fourth episode, Andrew?
This will be
Number four?
our sixth episode.
What? How did we do that? How did we so is our next one our seventh? Because most podcasts don't make it to 7.
Correct. Mhm.
So we love you all. Thank you for joining us. It's been an honor. Yay! That was so fun.
Thanks, Marina. Yeah,
Thank you guys. Wasn't that a fun conversation?
absolutely.
Yes.
So we're gonna be doing more of that, and like we'd love Andrew, like your council person on, like we might even cut this in a little bit so that like we might even cut a little of this conversation into a video to show at your meeting next Tuesday night for your council.
Okay.
They can see like, oh, you actually have voices of the community talking, like, so they can get a feel for it. Anyway, super excited. This was so fun. See, aren't you? You don't know what you're going to end up doing when you text me.